And speaking of government liars, remember when President Biden promised there'd be no new taxes on anyone making over $400,000 a year? I do, because it was literally last night. Watch.
As long as I'm president, nobody earning less than $400,000 will pay an additional penny in taxes. Nobody, not one penny.
Well, one day later, he's coming after waitresses. The IRS reportedly planning a crackdown on, quote, tip reporting compliance to get its cut of every inflated dollar that service workers make. The agency is now asking business owners to count and report their employees' tips to make sure that everyone is being honest. So is harassing the middle class really the answer to our economic woes? The Man panel is back. Chris Bedford, Juan Williams, and Spike Cohen. You know, Chris, a lot of waitresses make more than $400,000 a year in tips, so they are right to go after those tax cheats.
Yeah, it definitely flies completely in the face of everything that Joe Biden's been saying, especially in the State of the Union, which kind of draws the perfect contrast because Joe Biden's State of the Union, as you were talking about, was kind of MAGA. It was kind of nationalist. It was kind of bring our industry back. But the actions of his administration fly in complete and total contrast to those messages. The actual policies he generally pushes fly against those sorts of things. On one hand, they're trying to give away free college to all these students. On the other hand, they're trying to crack down on the waitresses and the waiters. I was in that industry for about 12 years and almost did it for a living. There's always been a back and forth on tips, an assumption by the owners that what's reported is what's reported, an assumption by the IRS that you're making a certain percentage in your tips. More systems that they claim are voluntary. I think those voluntary systems the IRS is doing are going to be mandatory tomorrow.
Yes. So they say this is all voluntary, Juan. I think it's patently unfair.
Wait a second. Why do you think it's unfair? It's not. They're not. First of all, it's not a new rule. They're just asking for opinions from the people who are waitresses and waiters and the employers because they want to reduce the number of audits. And so they're saying that they think that, you know, all the electronics we have these days, point of sale, attendance records, that it could reduce the administrative burden. If that's the case, I don't see this as some kind of nefarious government threat to hardworking people. I think it might, in fact, lessen the burden because people would therefore be subject to fewer audits. But if it gets out of hand, and with government, things often do get out of hand, then you got a problem.
So, Spike, I see you smiling. What kind of problems do you foresee? And what dishonesty is afoot here?
If your voluntary compliance is met with massive enforcement and audits and garnishing of your wages and seizure of your property if you don't comply, it's not voluntary. So let's dispense with that. I too remember the heady days of less than 24 hours ago when Joe Biden told us that he would not increase taxes on anyone making under $400,000. And frankly, at long last, the IRS is finally going after the real cheats here, the billionaire waiters and waitresses and you know, people in the service industry. I mean, here's the reality of things. Taxation is a form of predation. It is theft and extortion, and predators always go after the easiest prey. And in this case, the easiest prey is those who make the least and who don't have the money to hire multi-million-dollar firms to protect them. It turns out those tens of thousands of new agents, they didn't hire them to go after the few hundred billionaires. They hired them to go after people who didn't report a $700 transaction on their Venmo, or in this case, a tip that they got. But there is actually a way around this scheme, this particular scheme, and that's when you go out to a restaurant or a bar and you get the bill, give out the tip as a gift in cash, put a big 0 right next to where it says tip on the receipt, and make sure that your server knows this is not a tip, this is a gift, and small gifts are not taxable. We need to stop talking about how to redirect the beast, and we need to start starving the beast.
I love a utilizable tip that you've just given out, Spike. I think that is fantastic. Cash gifts for everyone in the service industry. All the fancy billionaires who are desperately waiting tables.